Hey, today we're going to talk about SisterHood, episode 3. It really wasn't that much with this episode, but let's get into it anyway. It starts off with Pastor Tara and Pastor Brian. They're in their kitchen talking, and they're getting the food set up because they're having all the couples come over for their big announcement. Pastor Christina and Pastor Anthony, they show up first, and she mentions to him that they need to talk about their disagreement. And he's like, we over that. We're men, we're kind of over that. Men can move on. So they walk in, and they kind of hash out their differences with Tara and Brian. And he gives them some chocolate cake as a peace offering. And, you know, it was cool. Then the rest of the couples get there, and they're all eating and stuff. And then Pastor Tara and Pastor Brian, they make this big announcement that they're going to start their television ministry show or whatever. So all the ladies are kind of looking at them kind of like, what and why and whatever. So Dominique was like, well, what are you wearing? And Pastor Tara was like, I'm wearing jeans and a cowboy hat and It was a joke, but Tara was like, well, come to my store and I'll dress you. So the next scene is with Dominique and Miss Lorraine. Miss Lorraine is a prominent pastor's wife in Atlanta. Don't know which one, they didn't say. But she's known in Atlanta. So they're talking, and Tara walks in. They start talking to Tara about her show and what kind of direction it is and where would it be located, like filmed, and what time. And Tara really couldn't give them an answer. So they don't think she's ready for this. And that's how I was feeling too. Like, you can't give them no simple answers. You're not ready. Anyway, they getting her dressed, and she tells them that she has somebody that called in and said that her husband watches porn. So they was like, well, the advice that you give. And she was like, my advice was for her not to sleep with him no more, or until he can stop or whatever. And they was like, what? And even Miss Lorraine was like, do you know what happens when people watch porn? And she was like, I don't know, I never watched it. And she was just like telling her, like, that's for them to be able to be together. And like, Tara wasn't feeling that. And Miss Dominique was like, your son is going to watch it. He's going to look at movie magazines. And she like, no, not my son. And the way I raised him. And I'm sitting there like, I don't care how you raise your son. He's going to look at it. Your daughter might look at it, girl, boo. And, like, it's a good thing. You might well look at it, too. That's all I'm saying. Just something. Might help y'all little relationship. Anyway, moving on. Moving on. It goes to Tara and Brian. They're practicing their little show or whatever, and they're kind of having differences. They can't compromise because Brian wants to be a preacher. He wants to be at a podium preaching, and Tara wants to sit down and like have a forum kind of discussion, and they can't come to agreement. And then he said, well, what if you do a show one week and I do a show one week? And she was like, that's not like we're together, and she really not feeling it. But I understand what he's saying, like, you do a preaching segment one week, and then he do a preaching segment, and then you do a talking segment. So I kind of understand. So y'all kind of still working together. Anyway, the next thing was with Dominique and Ivy. They had lunch, and they're discussing Dominique's financial issues, and she's just saying how she's so much in debt, and she wants her kids to go to a better school and all this kind of stuff. And I'm sitting there like, girl, if your kids got a roof over their house, lights, gas, food, you got to make do until you can do better. You can't just be, oh, I want my kids to go to a better school, Not when you in financial issues. You can't do that. You got to make sure you just got a roof over your kids' head. But to each his own. She was explaining how her husband, he's a contractor and he loses a lot of jobs or whatever, and that he had just recently lost a job because, which is true, contractors, you will get work and then something will happen, weather will happen, and you can lose that job. So I understand of them and his contracted business. Next was Pastor Delaney and Pastor Miles. They had an event at their church where they had these cardboard signs where on one side it was what you did in your past, and on the other side it was about where you at now that they were saved and or whatever. So you can kind of see where they can show people where they was and where they are now. And I thought that was a cool little event. It was very original to me, and it was cool. I liked that. Then we got to learn, well, before we get to Tara, did they show what was on Christina's card? Because her husband made a comment saying that, I didn't know that about you, and I'm sitting there like, you guys got teenage daughters. How did you know, like, her past or whatever? And she was like, there's a lot you don't know about me. And I'm sitting there like, that was weird. But anyway, Tara, her thing was she was an adulterer. She said she was married before Brian, and she cheated on him because she wasn't really happy in her marriage or whatever. And that just showed a different side of Tara. Not too much, but they showed a different side of Tara. And even all the other ladies said that about her. They didn't know that because Tara portrayed herself as this holier than thou, like she's always been saved. But to me, every saved person has a past. All of them. They all have a past. But nobody just born saved. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, Ivy and her husband, they're talking about her illness and about she's scared that she might not have another baby, and he's just real being supportive to her, so I like that. Then we have Tara Brand, they're walking and they're talking about what they want to do with their church, and they still can't compromise, but Brian just like, I want to preach. The next thing, Dominique, she pawned her wedding ring, because she said she has to make some ends meet or whatever. I understand you have to do what you gotta do to make ends meet, but like I said before, make sure you got a roof over your kids' heads. That's all I can say. Ivy calls her mom and tell her mom about her having knee surgery. Her mom was like, okay, I'll be there for you. I'll be there. Don't worry about it. At the end, Tara, she's on her way to do her show, and Brian decides he don't want to go. So then Tara calls all the other women, and they drop whatever they doing, and they come to help her out. But that's all that happened really with this show. That's it. That's really what all happened on this show. So make sure you rate, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at thaghettoview. Follow me on Facebook at thaghettoview, Instagram at Ms. Nika, MIDZ, NEKA69. Talk to me and I'll talk back. All right, peace.